Hello, welcome to my channel. Today, we are tackling a mystery that completely changed how I look at my morning routine. We often think of our meals as isolated events. You know, you eat a donut, you get a spike, and then it's over. But what if I told you that the toast you eat at 8 a.m. is actually the invisible hand controlling how your body handles your dinner at 7 p.m.?
It sounds like time travel, but it's actually biology. To help us understand this connection, I have Dr. Gluco here, a metabolic specialist who loves nothing more than connecting the dots between our meals. Welcome, Doctor. Expert. Thank you. It is great to be here. And you are right, it does sound a bit like science fiction.
But the concept is very real. We call it the second meal effect. It is the physiological phenomenon where the nutritional quality of your first meal dictates your glucose tolerance for the next meal. So let's break that down. You're saying if I eat a good breakfast, my body is better at handling a bad lunch?
Precisely, but it works the other way too. If you eat a metabolic disaster for breakfast, or sometimes if you skip it entirely, you prime your body to fail at lunch.
This was first identified back in the early 1980s by Dr. David Jenkins. He is actually the father of the glycemic index. He noticed something peculiar when studying lentils. Lentils? Okay, I love a good origin story. What happened with the lentils?
They fed a group of people lentils for breakfast. As expected, their blood sugar didn't spike much because lentils are low glycemic. But here is the kicker.
4 hours later, they fed the same group a standard lunch. The researchers expected a normal response to lunch. Instead, the glucose spike at lunch was significantly lower than usual. The lentils from 4 hours ago were somehow protecting the subjects from the carbohydrates in the second meal. This became known as the lentil effect, or broadly, the second meal effect. Host, that is incredible! It's like the lentils left a security guard behind. But why? What is physically happening in the body to allow that?
To understand the mechanism, we have to look at three things: free fatty acids, insulin sensitivity, and glycogen. Let's start with free fatty acids, or FFAs.
When you haven't eaten for a while, like overnight, your body breaks down fat for fuel. This releases free fatty acids into your bloodstream. This is normal. However, high levels of FFAs induce a temporary state of insulin resistance. Essentially, your muscles prefer to burn that fat, so they shut the door on glucose. Okay, so the fat is clogging the lock. If I eat breakfast, I stop that fat release?
Exactly. Eating a breakfast that contains slow-digesting carbohydrates suppresses those free fatty acids. By lowering the FFAs, your muscles become sensitive to insulin again.
So, when you get to lunch, your muscles are open for business. They are ready to soak up glucose quickly and efficiently. If you hadn't eaten that breakfast, your FFA levels might still be high or rebounding. So if I skip breakfast, which is basically intermittent fasting, right? My FFAs stay high. Does that mean my lunch spike will be worse?
This is where it gets nuanced. For many people, yes. If you skip breakfast, your FFA levels rise significantly by lunchtime because you are in a fasted state.
When you finally break that fast with a carb-heavy lunch, your muscles are still in fat-burning mode. They resist the glucose. As a result, your blood sugar shoots up higher than if you had eaten breakfast. We see this in studies constantly. The omission of breakfast often leads to significantly higher postprandial, that means after eating, glucose levels at lunch and even dinner. Wow! So by trying to save calories in the morning, I might be wrecking my metabolic health in the afternoon. What about the second mechanism you mentioned, glycogen?
Right, glycogen. Think of your liver and muscles as gas tanks. When you eat slow-absorbing carbs, like those lentils or oats at breakfast, you refill these tanks gently.
This gentle filling signals the body to keep the storage pathways enzyme active. You are keeping the machinery oiled. The enzymes responsible for storing sugar remain upregulated. If you eat a sugary breakfast, you flood the system. The tank overflows, the system panics and shuts down to protect itself. Then, when lunch comes, the machinery is jammed. So the second meal effect is really about momentum. A low GI breakfast creates good momentum, a high sugar one creates a crash, and skipping it creates a roadblock.
That is a perfect analogy. And there is actually a third layer to this, which involves the gut microbiome. This is the fermentation factor.
I knew the gut would show up eventually. How does my gut bacteria know what I'm eating for dinner?
When you eat indigestible fibers at breakfast, again, think beans, whole grains, intact fruits, they travel down to the colon unabsorbed.
Hours later, right around lunchtime or early afternoon, your bacteria start fermenting these fibers. This process produces short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. These SCFAs do something magical. They signal a hormone called GLP-1. You have probably heard of it. It's the hormone mimicked by weight loss drugs like Ozempic. Wait, so eating fiber at breakfast naturally triggers the Ozempic hormone later in the day?
Yes, to a degree. This GLP-1 slows down gastric emptying. It tells your stomach, hey, slow down the lunch delivery.
So, because of the fiber you ate at 8 a.m., the sandwich you eat at 1 p.m. enters your blood slower. The curve is flattened. That is the second meal effect in action. This is mind-blowing. It's like setting a time-release trap for your lunch sugar. So let's talk practical application. I want this superpower. We know lentils work, but, and I say this with love, I am probably not eating a bowl of lentils at 7 a.m. every day. What are my other options?
Fair enough. Those savory breakfasts are great. But you don't need plain lentils. The key is low glycemic indexed and fermentable fiber.
Steel-cut oats are a classic example. Not the instant packet kind. Those are basically sugar. I mean the chewy, hearty ones. Pair those oats with berries and walnuts. The fats in the walnuts and the fiber in the oats suppress the FFA rebound we talked about earlier. What about eggs? A lot of people do the high-protein, low-carb breakfast. Does that trigger the second meal effect?
Protein is fantastic for satiety, but strictly speaking, the second meal effect regarding glucose tolerance is strongest with slow-carb fibers.
However, protein does stimulate insulin secretion, which can help clear sugar. But to get that specific colonic fermentation benefit we just discussed, you need plant matter. My suggestion? Add beans to your eggs. A breakfast burrito with black beans and eggs is a metabolic powerhouse. It gives you protein and the lentil effect. Beans for breakfast. We are back to beans. But in a burrito, I can do that. Now, I have to ask about the morning after scenario. Let's say I messed up. I had the donuts, or I had the sugary cereal. Is my day ruined? Is there a rescue meal effect?
It is not ruined, but you have to adapt. Since you spiked your insulin and crashed, your FFAs will likely rebound hard before lunch, making you hangry.
To fix this, your lunch needs to be ultra-low carb to compensate. You cannot throw fuel on the fire. If you had a donut for breakfast, have a big salad with chicken and olive oil for lunch. Do not have a sandwich. Your body is not in a state to process that bread efficiently because of what you did at 8 a.m. That is really practical advice. It is about balancing the ledger throughout the day. I want to circle back to one thing you mentioned earlier about the liver. You mentioned that a good breakfast keeps the liver open. Does this apply to dinner? Does my lunch affect my dinner in the same way?
Yes, the effect cascades. It's a daisy chain. Breakfast primes lunch, lunch primes dinner, and, this is crucial, dinner primes your overnight fast.
So the second meal effect is really the every meal effect. Breaking the cycle starts with the first thing you put in your mouth. I love that. sending a memo to your cells. So to wrap this up for our listeners, let's build the perfect second meal effect breakfast.